Okay, thank you so much, William. I won't take a lot of time. I just will give a very brief introduction of Livagon. For those of you who already know what is Livagon, you might guys still, have your time, take some drinks. For those of you for the first time in the event, I would like to give a short introduction. So once again, my name is Sasha. I'm working for the Wagon Tokyo. And what is Wagon? Wagon is a global coding bootcamp with 39 campuses around the world. And what we do, we teach people how to code and how to build web applications, how to build real product in a short period of time. So recently, since October, we are launching also the new format, the data science. So we will teach people how to build data science projects. Next slide, please. What we are very proud of is that we have been ranked as #1 coding bootcamp around the world, according to our student reviews. And since founding our global bootcamp, we have over 8,000 graduates who went through our bootcamp programs. And also they built a lot of applications during and after the bootcamp. Some of these applications became startups. Next slide, please. And a lot of our alumni are hired by the best tech companies in the world. We hope that maybe one day Saibozo also will join the list of these companies, so we can put your logo on here. Next slide, please.
You're hiring.
Okay. So before that, I have been talking about the global Wagon campuses. Right now, I'll tell about the Wagon Tokyo. We have been founded in 2016. Since that time, we had a lot of 16 batches already graduated and over 200 alumni. We have a very diverse coding bootcamps all the time. It's a lot of people from around the world. Usually people flew to participate in the bootcamp. Right now, we have mainly domestic audience, but still the audience is very, very diverse. The average age is late 20s, early 30 years old, but we actually open for anyone. We also host a lot of events almost every week. So we have over 3,000 people in our Meetup audience, and we are very happy to have a joint workshop with Kintone today. That's really an honor for us. You know very well where to slide. Thank you so much, Will. What do we teach? As I mentioned, we teach web development and data science. We teach in 2 formats. The full-time bootcamp, 9 weeks from Monday to Friday, every day, very intense program, and part-time bootcamp for those who have some work or family commitments. They can study after work and on Saturday. What do we teach? We don't teach as the usual computer science degree. We try to give people a lot of practical experience so they can build some product by themselves. And aside from the hard skills, we also teach them a lot of soft skills, and we also teach them graphic design and how to work in a team. Okay, just a bit about the alumni. What kind of profiles do we have? After the bootcamp, some of our alumni become developers. Some of the alumni become, next slide, product managers. And also they become, next slide, entrepreneurs, launch their own startups, and freelancers. So we have a very diverse career path after the bootcamp. And this is the last slide. I just wanted to announce that the applications are still open for our web development bootcamps that are starting in the end of September. The full-time and the part-time starting almost same time, but with a 2 days difference. And also the data science applications open. The data science bootcamp starts on October 12th. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't take a lot of time. If you have any questions about Wagon Tokyo bootcamps or events, or you want to collaborate with us, feel free to send me a message. That was all from me. William, I'm giving the microphone to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. All right. So I'm going to be starting the Bubble Cloud workshop. Thank you for coming. If you haven't downloaded the, if you haven't accessed the developer license yet, please get it right now. There'll be some time later on to get it if you haven't got it right now. And I think Genji has posted some links to getting the developer license. So if you can get it through that, that'll be great. So I'm going to carry on. So if you click on this, if you actually access the bit.ly link here, KDP bubble, you'll be taken to a gist, which looks like this, which has a lot of files inside, but you can download everything inside there by clicking on download zip, which I do recommend because it's pretty quick. And it includes some JavaScript files and I believe the PDF as well. If you have trouble signing up for the KDP account, you might face some issues with some browsers. So please don't use Safari, please use Chrome and Firefox if you can. And there's a sign at the bottom saying, please accept our cookies. So if you can click to accept the cookies, the form should work probably. If you have any issues on the sign up, you can message Genji or Nikki, who are with me today, on the chat, and they should be able to help you out. And the final form you should be sort of filling out should be this, and that should give you the Kintone developer license, which we'll be using inside this workshop. All right, so how are we going to start the no server data visualization build a bubble cloud project? And just the introduction, we are the Kintone developer program team. So that's Will, myself, Genji, and Nikki are my colleagues. We all run the Kintone developer program. And hi, I'm Will. I'm part of a company called Cybozu Inc. And my role is a Kintone developer advocate. And developer advocates, basically, our job is to get developers excited about using our product. And in this case, about Kintone. And I am from London. I speak English and Japanese, and languages in terms of computing. I do JavaScript and some C# Unity. And I play badminton in my spare time. Not right now, but I will again once everything is fine. All right. So overview of today's workshop, we'll be doing two things. We will build a I can never say this. We'll be building a visualization project together using Kintone. And by the end of the workshop, everyone will walk away with a project that they can work further on. And this project is mainly for front-end developers who want to spend less time setting up their back-end infrastructure. And I understand if you're at Wagon, you do some JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and maybe some Ruby. But basically, we're knocking out the back-end part. If you're interested in the front-end part and you want to concentrate on the UI, the UX of your project, then this workshop is for you. Today's agendas, we'll go through these four. We'll first go through the big picture of Kintone and what it is, and we'll just give you a large overview of what it is. And then we'll actually touch Kintone and start building things out. And then on our third agenda, we'll display the Antrots library on Kintone. And then finally, we'll do some extra part with calling REST APIs from within Kintone. So first of all, getting the big picture of Kintone. So I think for a lot of you, Kintone is pretty new. Oh, and sorry, before I proceed, if you run into any issues at all, anytime, please post in the chat what your issues are. Any comments are welcome. If you want to keep your video off, that's fine. If you want to turn them on, that's fine. If you want to put your filters on, that's perfectly fine. You can keep them on and off. And if you want to chime in by audio, by all means do that as well. So any sort of interaction is okay with us. All right, so carrying on with getting the big picture of Kintone. So we're going to first talk about the scope of traditional data analytics. So when we talk about data at work, in the office, and you have a lot of business data, we have three main goals that we have. We want to first make the data look pretty so everyone we'll be looking at the data that we have. The second goal is to make the data understandable and easy. So anybody looking at the data will be able to understand what it's about. And the third goal is to generate actionable insight. So it's not enough to just build the data. We build the data, we look at it, and we understand what to do next is the third goal that's needed when we're doing data analytics. But the thing is, are we sharing the insights effectively? And if you've ever worked in a company before, you'll know that multiple tools are used within the company, like these tools over here on the screen. You'll understand that conversations are scattered everywhere across tools such as emails, chat, calendars, and it's very hard to find where we last chatted about a certain subject, like a client's request. And then you'll find other sort of data is scattered everywhere across spreadsheets or business reports or cloud storages. And it's very hard to find the latest file with, like things like compiled reports from team members. And what we basically get is we have scattered communication. We're unclear of where the conversation is happening. And we also have data silos of data being just scattered everywhere and not being shared effectively. And what Kintone does is basically it solves this problem so that the data and the conversation about the data are all in one place. So what exactly is Kintone? Kintone is noted as a no-code, low-code cloud platform. So it does both no-code and low-code. And it's for teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. Technically, it's a platform to create databases easily with communication features. And that's all you really got to know as a developer at the beginning. And Kintone allows you to create web databases, which we call apps. And you can think of apps as online spreadsheets where teams can access to share their data. And it makes sharing data with teams easier. Traditionally, like on the left-hand side, you'll have a hard scenario where you're trying to share data in a really, really bad way. And everyone's trying to build a report and they're sending emails of their final Excel files, and you've got to compile this final Excel file to report to your boss. But this is a really ineffective way. You're getting data at different times with different versions in different formats, and it's really unclear of what your final file will look like. And if you're using Kintone, it's basically an online endpoint where everyone can access, and this is where everyone can share their data in the same format much easier. Kintone also makes conversations about data easier. Communication is really hard when it's scattered over email and chat and text because you don't know really where to search for about a conversation that you had with someone somewhere. And if you keep all the conversation on Kintone and that's right next to the data, then it's really easy to find the last conversation you had about a particular data. And one example is, here is a screenshot of where we have some data inside a Kintone application. And on the left-hand side, this is where a data lives about a certain subject. And on the right-hand side, this is where we have communication where people can leave comments about the data. And it's neat because you can also loop in the right people at the right time by setting up workflow features within Kintone. For example, if you're talking about data about a customer complaint, and it first needs to be discussed with the project managers and the dev team. And after that conversation is done, you can assign it to a support staff to contact the client. So setting up workflows is really easy in Kintone as well. workflow or process management. So this allows the right people to see the right data at the right time. So if you've ever worked in a company before, you have expense reports that need to be reviewed by the accounting team, legal document reviews that need to be reviewed by the legal team before it's published. All those people can be involved when you're using Kintone so that they're looking at it at the right time. And you can also control what data should be sort of shared and who can see what, or who can see what apps or the records, which are like the lines in the spreadsheet, or the particular data within those records. Like a common use case you can have is if you have an Kintone app that records a hiring process, it's pretty common that you have view permissions so that it's limited, so that sensitive data can only be seen by HR teams and the interviewers. So you can do that as well. And all these, setting up applications, setting up workflows, setting up permissions, all this can be done with no code. But as a no-code, low-code platform, we make sure that not only business users, but developers can be involved when using this product as well. So business users are building out the various applications like the product catalog or knowledge bases within the company. The applications with various tools, and one of those tools is JavaScript. So we'll go back to Kintone apps. So the main building block in Kintone is an app. And you can imagine an app as a powerful online table, like an online spreadsheet where data is stored in records. So you'll have a table view and each row will be what we call records. And what's really neat about Kintone is the way you can build out the database with a drag and drop interface. And if any of you have tried to build out a database by code before, it's not easy. I wouldn't say it's very hard, but it's very tiresome. By code, you gotta state the table name, and then you gotta type out each fields of the database. Like you gotta say, okay, I'm gonna build out the name field, which will hold strings, which is going to be 150 characters or less, and it can't be null. And my next field is going to be a gender field that will hold a string with 6 characters or less. And you got to keep stating that, and then you'll be able to build out your database. To be honest, all this is actually very boring in my point of view. And you can really, really speed up the creation of databases if you're using Kintone. If you want a name field, drag in a text field inside, call it name. And if you need a character limit, you can set that up in the options as well using the GUI. And this whole feature set of Kintone really fulfills the promise of data analytics, which is to gain meaningful insights about the data that can be put into use or put into operation very quickly. And so how do developers contribute? What is the developer's role with Kintone? So developers can use Kintone and they can enhance it in various ways. One common way is to create a custom look and feel within Kintone. And that can be requested by internal employees or external customers who really want their data to be shown exactly in the shape that they want. And developers have the power to build that shape. Kintone also can integrate with third-party applications via REST API. And data, there's a lot of data within the company, and they can be lying in various sort of specialized tools, but they can be extracted and piped into Kintone for efficient data collaboration. And it really allows, if the data lies in Kintone, it allows people from different teams to work on that data to have more efficient conversations. There are many ways to enhance Kintone's feature using JavaScript or REST APIs, or building out custom extensions as well that can be shared with users and non-code users as well. And when we say creating a custom look and feel, we really mean it. So how you can have, if you have an HTML file, JS file, and CSS file, I think you pretty much know you can really build out whatever web page you want. By incorporating a number of libraries as well, you can really create your own custom look and feel. And you can apply that same logic to Kintone, but there's this extra bonus of having data lying in the Kintone application, which you can reach out from the JavaScript files to get, and you can display those on Kintone. On the left-hand side, we have a bubble chart, which we'll be creating in a few minutes. So that's one way of extracting data of Kintone and building it out visually. And on the right-hand side, I've extracted data from Kintone and made a game out of it, which is Space Ada's game. So it really depends on what sort of what you want to make, what libraries you want to use. Kintone has REST APIs to manipulate data within records from external services as well. So you have a lot of REST APIs. You can upload and download files as well. Kintone also has webhooks. So if you're adding data or updating data within Kintone, you can send out webhooks to an endpoint, such as AWS or Zapier, Microsoft Flow, and those services can take care of the next process as well. And integration with third-party applications can be done securely and quickly. Each app that you create in Kintone can generate API tokens with specific permissions, granular permissions for that application, which greatly increases the development speed when using Kintone REST APIs. And it really reduces the risk associated with giving too much permissions with the token, which you might have sort of experienced before if you're using like GitHub APIs and you have a token which basically gives you access to like a lot of repositories. And as a developer, you can also share your enhancements with non-coders as well. So you can package it into what we call plugins, and then you can distribute to them to other people as well. So they can use your customization without needing to code. So we've gone through, a lot of overviews of Kintone. We'll be touching Kintone in a minute. Just before that, there are two large ways in which we want you people as developers to be involved with Kintone. And the first is using Kintone as a way for self-learning. So as Kintone has a lot of affiliation with the JavaScript and REST API, it's a very great tool to use to get used to technical knowledge. On our developer website, there are a lot of articles based on using Kintone with JavaScript, so you can learn JavaScript through Kintone as well. We really encourage you to write your findings on tech blogs. If you're in Japan at the moment, there's Kita, which is a technical blog site. If you want to write foreign blog posts, more, I say foreign, but in English blog posts, there's a site called dev.to, which I also encourage as well, which is a developer version of Medium. It's a very nice place to share your findings and getting in touch with the developer community. And speaking of community, if you belong to a certain community, go ahead to share your projects that you've made with Kintone with the community as well. And I said there are two large ways you can interact with Kintone, and the second one is for creating revenue. So any customizations that you can make, there are ways to create and sell these Kintone extensions. So I talked about plugins, but you can basically sell those plugins to Kintone customers. If you have any consulting experience, we briefly talked about how you can unify your data and have better collaboration within the company when using Kintone, and you can consult with companies about using Kintone so that they can achieve their business goals. Another way for creating revenue is developing Kintone customizations for customers who are already using Kintone. So now that we've gone through the big picture of Kintone and how developers can contribute, we'll get back to a workshop of creating projects with no servers. All right. Sorry that took a long time, but here we are. So how is this all related to building projects with no servers? Well, basically, you can basically do your learning or your revenue creation without needing to work with the servers. Kintone will basically become the server. So we say no servers, but Kintone basically is the server running your database. And you'll be able to create these databases without accessing your servers, just through the GUI. And it'll allow you to concentrate on the front-end work and have Kintone do all the back-end work. And we will go to the second agenda where we'll actually access our Kintone environment and create an application. All right, so let's go ahead and create a Kintone app, which is basically a web database. So the first thing is, what sort of database shall we make? And in this particular workshop, we'll be making a board game database. But if there are any people who have been with us before, joined our workshop before, you can go ahead to build out the other application examples we have over here. If it's your first time, let's build a board game database together. So it's very actually hard to do workshops online, but this is how we're going to do it. I will first go through what we're going to do. So I'll go through the screenshots. I'll be saying, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to click. And then at the end, I'll show you a list of the things that you should be doing, and you can work on the workshop when I say go. If you still have not signed up for a developer license, please sign up now. And once you fill out this form for the developer license, what you should get is an email that looks like this. If your HTML settings are on, you might find the email within your promotion tab if you're using Gmail. Otherwise, it's already found in the junk box, but you might want to look at that just in case. If you're not receiving this email, you should contact Nikki and Genji right now. And if you click on Activate Now, you should be accessing your Kintone domain. So what I didn't make it clear, but Kintone is a web service. So it's not something that you'll download on your computer and you'll be running that on your computer. It's something that's in the cloud and you'll be accessing it through the browser. And you'll have your own subdomain, which is the subdomain you written out when you signed up for Kintone. So mine could be willsayama.kintone.com. And you'll put your password in and you'll log into Kintone. This is a screen you'll see, administration and Kintone. Just click on Kintone and you'll be taken to the portal. Once again, I'm just going to go through the slides that say hands-on right now, and everyone can view these slides later on at a certain page. All right, and what we'll be doing is we're going to be accessing the portal page. On the right-hand side of the page, there's a section called Apps, and there'll be a plus sign that you'll be clicking, which will take you to the app creation page. There'll be several ways where you can build an application. The first thing we're going to do is create an application from scratch. So you'll be clicking that button, which will take you to the page to build out your form. You can click the title and give it a name. And then you can go ahead to drag and drop the necessary fields that we need in this board game database. To be honest, you can feel free to put in whatever you want. This is the fields that we recommend for this board game database. The first thing is to place in the text field. So you'll drag and drop that into the canvas. Then you'll click the gear icon by hovering over the text field that you just placed in and click on settings. And what it'll do, it'll build up, it'll pop up a text settings, a settings page for that text box where you can change the name. So you can name it whatever you want. We named it name. We can go ahead and then, you click on save, and then we'll put in the next field in the canvas, which will be a drop-down field. Drag it into the field. Once again, open up the settings by hovering over it and clicking on the gear icon. And we'll give it a name, and we'll call it type. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the options for the drop-down. So I'm going to call it type, and the options are going to be abstract and area control. You'll click on the plus button for the options, which will create another option for the dropdown, and you'll name it drafting. So what we're basically doing here is we're creating a dropdown with 3 options. So when you click on the dropdown, it's going to bring up abstract, area control, drafting, which are just names of board games. If you're not familiar with board games, but those are the sort of genres that you can play with board games. And you'll click on save after that. You might notice that each settings that you pop up will have what we call a field code on the bottom left. And you don't need to change this right now. You could change it if you want right now. It's not going to really affect our workshop right now. It's basically a unique identifier for each field that you set, which is going to be needed later on if you're doing any coding or if you're calling any REST APIs. The name is going to be the display name, and the field code is going to be like the actual backend name that Kintone has for each app. And we'll be covering that later on as well, actually, after we've done part of the workshop. So we've placed in the name and the type, and after that, we'll click on Activate App, and that should deploy the application, although there's no data inside. And you'll be able to access that whenever you're on the portal, where you can click on the home icon to go back to the portal. But whenever you access the portal, you'll be able to access your board game database, which will be on the bottom right. And when you put data inside, you'll be able to access various options like the details page of each record, or you can add new data or access the app settings. All right, but you'll need to actually manually put this data in. Okay, so time to get started. So this is where I'm going to hand it off to you. So I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to do this, so until 7:50 Japan time. All right, so please go ahead and try that out. There we go. Okay, and we're going to go to our second part of the workshop, which is going to be displaying AMP charts on Kintone. So this is the interesting part. This is where we get down to the bubble clouds. Okay. So Genji, could you go ahead to lower the hands of everyone else? So what is AMP charts? You might have heard of AMP charts before. It's a JavaScript library that represents charts and maps in a very, very organized and easy way. And AMP charts offers loads and loads of data visualization libraries. And this is just like, I've just picked out 8 interesting ones, but they have like 200 different sort of charts that you can use. And the traditional way of using these sort of libraries and any sort of libraries but in this case, Amtrot's libraries, is that you have an HTML file where you define your website details, and then you have a JavaScript library, which first reads in the Amtrot's libraries, and then you have some code that defines the chart details. And then you also have a part in your code that represents or defines the data that you want to sort of put into Amtrot. So it's represented as a graph. When you're using Amtrot on Kintone or any sort of a library on Kintone, this changes a lot. So you won't need to define any HTML with HTML files because you're using a web service, which is filled out by HTML. So we're using that HTML. And you won't need to write code to read in any libraries. We just have different settings for that. There's like a settings page where you like, I want to read this library, this library, this library, and you'll be setting that in the settings page. And you won't need to define any data. You could if you want in your code, but what we want to say is you can define the data within the Kintone apps because it's a database and it's a place for data storage, and that's where you put a lot of data in. And you'll be able to grab that Kintone data and use it to define your charts within your application. So this is basically what we're going to do. In our next hands-on, we'll be creating an app. We'll be creating a new app. We're actually going to ditch the app that we just made. We can always get back to that application whenever you want. But we'll be creating a new app, and we'll be creating one from a CSV file this time, which will be much quicker. We will then be adding JavaScript to the app, which is basically going to read in the Amtrot's library, and it's going to be using the Kintone data to do some data visualization, which is basically what we have right now in front of us. So once again, I'll go through the steps one by one, and then I'll finish on the slide where we have everyone go through the steps. So there are 4 steps in the Amtrot's customizations for Kintone. The first one is going to be creating a new Kintone app from a CSV file. We're just going to go through quickly how this is done. We created one from scratch last time. This time we're going to create one from a CSV file. You could also create one from an Excel file if you want, if you have a lot of data in your Excel file. The CSV file, we will give you the CSV file. It's actually inside the zip file that you may or may not have downloaded at the beginning of this workshop. If you haven't, please download it now because you would need that definitely for this next workshop. And you'll find a file named 01 Marvel Cinematic Universe Films CSV, which is an interesting CSV file with a lot of interesting data related to money and Marvel. And you'll be creating an application pretty similar to how we did before. We're going to the portal page. If you want to access your portal page, you click on the home icon on the top left. You'll access the portal page and click on the plus icons in the apps widget. And we'll be clicking on create from CSV, which is a comma separated value file. We'll be clicking it, and then there'll be a lot of text there, but we'll just click on continue, and it'll ask you to check all these things, but just check all of them and click on continue to the upload screen. And there'll be a place where you upload your CSV file by clicking on the file button, and you'll be able to upload the file as so. And you can scroll down to the bottom and click on convert. You don't need to change any settings. Okay. So that's the first thing we'll be doing. The next thing we'll be doing is adding the Amtrot's library to the application. So if you access your application by clicking on it, you'll see that pretty different from what we had last time. You'll actually have data already inside the application because all the data was inside that CSV file. And we just created an application with built-in fields and data as well. So what we're going to do is click on the gear icon of this application, which will take you to the app settings. There'll be many tabs saying forms, views, graphs, and app settings, and we'll be clicking on the app settings tab, which will take you to a page with a lot of options. In here, you'll find JavaScript and CSS customization, which is going to be near in the middle. Okay, this is the tricky part because there are a lot of buttons. But what we're going to do is click on Add Link. And what we're going to do is there are some links on the left-hand side of this slide. You're going to be copying those, and Genji will be posting all of those links within the chat file, so you can always copy and paste easily. But what we're going to basically do, you're going to copy those links into the settings here. And there are four settings. There are four settings here where you can upload links and upload files. One's called Upload JavaScript for PC. This is where you want to add all your links. There's another one called Upload JavaScript file for mobile devices. Ignore that. And there are two other ones that say Upload CSS files. You ignore that. You put the first three links that we have here under the Upload JavaScript for PC option. All right. And you might realize that these are Amchart libraries which have Amcharts written inside here. And oh, important thing, don't click on the save button yet, because we're actually going to add one more file, which is going to be a custom JavaScript file that we've already written for you so that no one makes mistakes. And this is also inside the zip file. It's called 03visualization.js. And this is something we've written for you, but we will go over the contents of it later on. Okay, so when we uploaded the links, we clicked on Add Link, but this time we're going to click on Add File. And we're going to upload that JS file. So you end up with these three links, which are added with Add Links. And we're going to end up with a final JS file, which is added with Add Files. So it should be 4 files. And they should be in strictly this order. You can always switch around the order by clicking on the buttons on the left-hand side. Once that's done, we're going to click on Save. And there's going to be one last step, which takes 2 seconds, which is going to be redeploy the application, which is by clicking on the Update App, which is basically going to apply all the changes to the application. And the changes that we made here was uploading the JavaScript files. And it will take you back to the record list screen, which will take you to a page like this, where it's generated the data. To look like this. All right, so time to get started. I'll give you about 10 minutes for this one because it's a bit tricky uploading the files. So just as similar to what we did last time, you can access the files through the GIST link and then go through these, and please try this workshop out right now. Okay, so the link should take you to a page like this. All you got to do is download the zip file, which is on the top right side. You're just going to download a zip file, which is 23 megabytes. You're going to access it and open it. And within that file, there are a number of other files that you have. You're going to access your page. This is my Kintone page, which might have a lot of applications or something unrelated. I'm going to click on app, create one from a CSV file. Continue, going to check all these. Click on continue to the upload screen, click on browse. Here we go. And I am using actually a Japanese domain, which is defaulting to Japanese. And I'm going to click on convert, which is going to create my application like this. And this is all the data inside. And this, for your information, is data taken strictly from Wikipedia, which has a lot of correct data inside, I believe. which is the worldwide box office gross in US dollars for each Marvel series that has been out. And there's about 23 of them out. And you can post your favorite Marvel series, and we can talk about that later on. I'm going to click on the icon here, which is a gear icon. Go to the app settings, JavaScript and CSS customizations. And I'm going to copy Genji's links in here. So this demo is for people who haven't managed to do it, but this is how to do it. I'm going to add the 3 links inside here. If you made a mistake, you can always change the orders here. And then we're going to add that JavaScript file, which is number 3. This is it. So this is what it should look like. Okay, and once you're done, you click on save, update the app, and if all goes well, everything should be running. Yay, and this is what you should be getting. And it's basically looking through all the data that's listed inside Kintone. And because there are 23 records, there are 23 circles inside here. If you just want to look at the Marvel series, we can filter what we see like this. And it's basically going to filter out all the records that have Avengers in the series. And the customization is just going to bring out those 4 ones which are listed inside the record. Okay, let's carry on. Let's look through the code. And before we look through the code, actually, these are the Amchart libraries that we uploaded onto the file, onto the Kintone application. And the first one is the core library needed for Amcharts. So if you're going to try out some Amcharts customizations later on, different ones, you'll definitely need the first one. So that's like the main one that you need. The second one is a library related to creating charts. And if you're not creating charts, you might be creating maps, which is a pretty nice customization as well, which we will touch upon later on. And the third library is more of a concentrated library exactly for the bubble chart, which technically is actually called a forced direct chart. And forced direct charts normally have the bubbles act as nodes, and there's usually a line in between each one. But this is what we use for the bubble charts. And if you want to try out a different sort of chart, you'll be pretty much swapping out that third library for something else. Okay, so if you've opened up the JavaScript file, the 4th JavaScript file, that was the custom code, you'll see line of data just like this. And we're going to go through each line here. So we're going to start off with a Kintone native event that triggers when the record list page loads. And if you've worked with JavaScript, I'm pretty sure that you're pretty familiar with events. So events on a page are triggered whenever a user clicks on something or the page loads. There are various sort of events in JavaScript. And Kintone has this sort of Kintone library already incorporated inside that web page. So if you call kintone.events.on, you can actually set a Kintone related event. And in this case, we've put in app.record.index.show. And if you look at the documents that we have on our developer site, it basically says this event triggers when the record list page, which is the page where we have the record list, loads. And when it loads, it's going to run the handler, which is basically this function. It's going to load everything. It's going to run the files, the code from line 4 onwards. Excuse me. The 4th line, it's where it gets what we call the header space element. This again is another native method within Kintone, but what it does, it retrieves the HTML element which is right above the record list, which you can see in this small screenshot that you have right now. Basically, basically it acts pretty close to like document get element by ID. I can't remember what the method was called, but acts like that sort of JavaScript method. But there's a native method for Kintone that gets that. All right, and we're getting that part because we're going to be placing the chart inside there. Next, line 8. This is where we create the chart instance. And there are 2 parameters for this m4core.create method. And the first parameter is where we insert the chart into the HTML element. So you specify what HTML element the chart's going to be in. And we just retrieved an HTML element with that get header space element method. So that's going to be our first parameter. And the second parameter is going to be what sort of chart is going to be displayed in that area. And this is going to be different for whatever chart you're going to be using. And in this case, we're going to be using the force direct chart, the force direct tree, which is basically the bubble charts that we'll be using. If you're unclear about anything, please post it inside the chat. In mcharts, you will regularly run into what we call a series, and we'll be creating a series for a chart. So once you create a chart, you create a series for the chart. And these are the various settings we can place in the chart. You can create multiple series, but this will basically end up in multiple graphs being displayed on top of each other. So you would normally create 1 series per chart, unless you want to build another one on top of that. So you create a series and then you'll give it, you'll change the settings within there by accessing the various properties that it has. Okay, next thing we've done is that we've put a console log in here just to see what it's like to be inside this event. And if I go back actually a few pages, notice when we call this event, had function brackets event. And this is an event object that can be called within the event handler. And what we basically did, we did a console log to see what sort of data is actually within this event object. And what this event object contains is the data of all the records that are displayed in the record list. And you may have noticed how I was demoing the last workshop, and I filtered out the records, so it'll be reduced to 4 records. And that's because there are only 4 records within the event object. So when this event object, what this event object includes is the number of records that you actually can see inside the Kintone app. Okay, and oh, sorry, this is a page I was explaining about what I was just explaining, so I'll go to the next page. And this is what it looks like at a close-up. So if you open up the developer console, you'll see there's an object, there is a record with an array of however many records there are within the record list. And if you click on the first one, which is going to be 0, you can see that there are a number of fields inside, like date, number, text, updated by, and they all have values inside that you'll be able to access. And what we're actually doing is inside this custom JavaScript file, we're accessing each data within this event object, and we're putting that together into one object, and then we're sending that to the mcharts library to create our chart for us. And that part is done through lines 21 to 26. So you can see where it goes through the event object, and we're using a map function. And if you're familiar with JavaScript, you might have gone across the map function. If you do code a lot on JavaScript and you have not come across the map function, we highly advise you to learn about it because it's very, very useful. And what this map method does, it basically creates a new array, and this is populated with the results of calling a provided function on every element in the calling array. What we're basically doing here, it's a 6-line algorithm to build out a JSON object which looks like this, which it looks like the data that's surrounded in red right now. I hope you can see it in your Zoom screen. So we have name tied in with Spider-Man Far From Home. And then there's a comma, and the next line is value, and then there's 113.192.7996. So that's one data set. And when we have these chunks of different data sets, what we do is we can send that whole data set into mcharts, which is actually on line 28, and mcharts will basically visualize that data set. So that's what we're actually doing in this mcharts customization. So a bit more about line 21 to 26, what we're doing here. We're basically building out that JSON object, and we're saying the key name is going to have a value, which is called record text value. And what is record text value? So what it's accessing is it's accessing the record object, and it's accessing the field where the field object is named text. So if you remember, the field codes are the unique identifiers within each field that you have within the Kintone app that lets you access the field values from your code. So what we're basically doing here, we're saying we'll look inside the record, look inside the field that has the field code of text, and give me the value of that. And for the first iteration, it's going to look through the first record. We're doing the same thing for the next line. We're saying value is a key, and for the value, we're basically looking at the field code that says number, which was the worldwide box office gross, and we're getting the value for that. So just as a reminder, we're making this sort of shape on the right-hand side, and that's what we just made. Name, Spider-Man, value 1131, blah, 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 is the shape we're making with this algorithm. And once we've made that JSON object, we put it into the series.data property. And that is pretty much how it is made. Quick note here, number is very confusing here. Is it a type or a name? Actually, there are a number of places where it says number. So let's see. Okay, so number inside here is the field code. Oh, sorry, you won't be able to see my mouse. Number on the very bottom right is the field code. So that's the identifier. The number you see on line 24, I believe, is making the value into a number type, because all the values that you access within the event object should be, are they all strings? They are all strings, aren't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're making that into a number. Thank you for the question. And the suggestion from you, Martin, call the field code something that does not sound like a type. How about box office scores? Yes, by all means, yes, that'll be definitely great. The reason why it's actually called number right now is because it's the automatically allocated field code that we assigned when we created with a CSV file. Yeah. So we could put a step in the workshop where we change the field code. We'll put that under consideration, but we sort of risked having that confusion. Thank you very much for the feedback here, Martin. It's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, and if you're not familiar with JSON, this is what it looks like. And this JSON object it's a notation for data, basically. And this notation it includes key value pairs. So the key is what's named name, and value is what's named Spider-Man or 11319. And when you're working with Kintone, you'll find a lot of JSON objects, and Uncharts likes being fed JSON objects. So if you're not familiar with JSONs, it's very nice to get familiar with it right now. Okay, so we're going to finish off actually with an extra bonus, which is calling REST APIs from Kintone. So since we're talking about data, wouldn't it be nice if we actually can get data from public APIs? If you're not familiar with REST APIs, REST APIs is a method of calling a request from a server to a public API or to a service, and you can get some data from that service, like get the latest pictures of blah, blah, blah from a certain service, and they'll respond to you with the pictures. If you've played around with REST APIs, you'll find that calling REST APIs directly from the browser, which is not a server, often results in what we called course errors. And basically what it's saying is it's saying because your browser is lying in a different domain from what you're trying to access, that place, the endpoint that you're trying to access is restricting you from getting data from there. So here is a course error example. There's a method called fetch that you can run in your browser console, your Chrome console, where you can try to get data from a different server. You can try this with XKCD. Hope you're familiar with XKCD, which is a great comic site. They do have an API actually for retrieving comic images. But if you try running it from like the Google homepage, you'll see that those red lines saying access to fetch blah, blah, blah from origin blah, blah, blah has resulted in a course error. And that's what would happen when you try to do that. When you're calling REST APIs from Kintone though, which is from the browser, you can actually bypass this by using a proxy server, which is a really nice way of doing this. So what Kintone will do from the browser, you'll call a method from Kintone, it'll access the proxy server, and calls from servers are accepted by the endpoint server, and it will respond the response to the proxy server, which will give the response back to the browser. There's a native method called kintone.proxy, where it has a number of functions inside. You state the API endpoint, the method like get or put, post, the headers, and the request body, and callback functions that you can run in. And you can ignore the callback functions to run a promise, to get a return a promise object back as well, if you're familiar with promises. Here's such an example. We're not going to go through the workshop of this right now because we actually don't have enough time. But for example, we've written inside here of how we use kintone.proxy when using the app.record.index show event. And on the right-hand side, when I refresh the screen, it basically gets the comic from XKCD, which we couldn't do by the console log, through the console. But Kintone's JavaScript is able to get that API result back. And the benefits of this REST API initiator is that it's similar to how fetch method works. And Kintone.proxy returns a promise object if you don't state any callbacks inside. So you'll be able to get the public data set that you need for your project into Kintone. Kintone proxy can be used on all browsers that Kintone is compatible with, and Kintone is compatible with IE, so you can run it on IE, which is great. And otherwise, most obviously, the REST APIs can be called from the browser without being blocked by CORS errors. We went through the picture of Kintone, and I hope you understand now that Kintone is a no-code, low-code platform, and you may be able to use, you can use the free Kintone developer license for your projects, which is going to be free for 1 year. And if you keep using it, it will be extended for another year. And if you keep using it, it will be extended for another year. So as long as we know that you'll keep using it, you'll be able to use it sort of indefinitely. All right, and secondly, we went through creating a Kintone application. So I hope everyone was able to build databases without coding, which is great because it speeds up the process. And we were able to go to the next step, which was displaying AMP charts on Kintone, where we managed to run JavaScript files. And the JavaScript files interacted with the data stored inside Kintone apps. And finally, what we did, we introduced how to call REST APIs from Kintone. And if you'd like to try that, please look through our slides again and try uploading that file inside your application. But there is a lot of example tutorials that we have online you can always look through. I hope you understand the benefits of using Kintone for whatever project you have. There's no need to set up or maintain a service. You can skip that step. Databases can be created easily with GUI, and then front-end JavaScript can utilize the database data. And also REST APIs can be called from front-end JavaScript and avoid CORS errors. If you're looking for projects to work on, there are many more demos that you can actually find on AMP charts by accessing this link. And the demo pages are really nice. What they have is basically they have the charts, and below that they have the codes that they used for the charts. So you can use that as reference if you want to build out similar charts with Kintone. If you're looking for other projects to work on next, if you access this GitHub link, it has a list of public APIs that you can access, and they have about 150 or so APIs. Things related to any sort of genre, whether it's health or sports or government. Other things you can do, if you've gone through a workshop but actually want to use a backend because of some sort of need, I do have an article that I created on dev.to that you could read through. So you can use Kintone as a backend database and retrieve data via Kintone's REST API. So I deployed a Node.js on Heroku, which calls REST APIs from Kintone, and it retrieves it and it builds out a web page out of that. So it's a simple thing that I'm doing here, but you can use that as reference for your own projects as well. If you're ever stuck, you can always post on trusty Stack Overflow, or you can access the community of the Kintone developer program. And for everyone who's already signed up for a Kintone developer license, there is a step to create a Kintone developer account. And you can use that account to post questions in the community. And we have hackathons. We're not hosting hackathons, but we are sponsoring 2 hackathons. One pretty much next week and one at the beginning of October. So if you're one of those types who likes doing hackathons but doesn't want to do serious stuff, you can join a Silly Hacks hackathon, which is where a lot of people join up to build silly stuff, and they won't necessarily solve any social issues that you have that are around you. Oh, please share a thing. Oh yeah, Genji, can you share the hackathon links? Okay, those aren't, yeah, so he'll share the links. There we go, Silly Hacks. Silly Hacks is actually mainly done in Indian time, which is IST, which is about 3.5 hours different from Japan. They are 3.5 hours behind Japan. But they're about 50% Indians and the rest are from all around the world. But if you're interested in building out silly stuff, go ahead and join Silly Hacks Hackathon. If you're up to it, build out your database with Kintone and you can hack with Kintone. And if you're one of those more serious people who wants to solve actual real world problems, then join the NASA Space Apps Hackathon, which is based more on Boston time, which is Eastern time, but accepts teams from all around the world. And once again, you can always use Kintone as the backend to speed up your hackathon processes. Just a note about the NASA Space Hackathon. It is starting in October, but there's like a there's a you have to join in like a week before. There's like a session that you have to join on the 23rd of this month, I think. So if you want to sign up for NASA Hackathon, you've got to do that pretty quick. We'll be sponsoring that as well. And we want to say thank you very much for Wagon Tokyo. And thank you for hosting this workshop with us. Thank you, Sasha, Sylvain, for helping us put this workshop together.
Thank you so much, guys. I know that it was very, very helpful workshop and very interesting and very interactive. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have very, very nice interactive members today. Otherwise, just before we finish, upcoming workshops, we do have a workshop based on bar chart races. It's basically similar to how we did the Amtrak stuff for Bubble Cloud, but this time we're working with bar chart race. Google bar chart race on YouTube, and you'll be able to know what bar chart races are. And they're very interesting stuff. So you can access those. And if you access this link, it'll give you a link to the events that we have, but we have signups on Eventbrite. So you'll end up at the Eventbrite page later on. Okay. Please do fill out the survey. We've done this workshop a number of times, but we're basically making better adjustments every time we do this workshop by looking at our surveys and making the slides better. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.